So about Challenge, here are my contact details and the website that we're continually developing and adding new resources and links to. We want the website to become a great hub for you to find all the information that you need. So please, if you've not had a chance yet, please do take a look and share any feedback regarding the ease of use and the things you feel are missing. At this point, I'd like to introduce Maria because she's our marketing associate. She works 2 days a week and pulls together the e-news and manages our social media channels and is a great point of contact for news that you might want to share. So Maria is, you know, we're a small team, and we've been blessed to have Martin Smith on secondment to us to lead on the Cultural Rucksack, supported by the Education Improvement Partnership. And we've also got a PhD student doing her collaborative doctoral award with us over the next 4 years. So although we're a small core team, you'll see from the logos here that we've got lots of people represented on our steering group. And of course, the strength of Challenge is the breadth of the amazing arts partners that are all part of it, you know, covering almost every conceivable art form. These lists just give you a glimpse of how lucky we are in Nottingham to have so many fantastic arts organisations, all either working with schools and devising projects or offering work to schools as part of their core programme all year round. I'm sure you'll recognise some of these names, and you may even discover some new ones. But I wanted to share this with you just so that you could get a sense of, you know, the scope and the amazing resource that we have here. So all of Challenge partners sign up to a shared vision, and Nottingham's, you know, our vision is that Nottingham's diverse population of children and young people are imaginative, innovative and creative and inform the cross-sector partnerships that champion creativity in schools and communities. So we do this, you know, by facilitating the connections, putting people in touch with each other, making sure that young people, it's not just about young people accessing what's already there in the existing provision, but it's about them also making sure that it's relevant. So we need to have that dialogue with children and young people too, to make sure that what's on offer is what they want to see, but also that they become the people that are making it happen. So we're a growing network of arts, education and youth organisations, and our focus is to identify and address the barriers to arts engagement. So we do that through sharing our experiences, project programming, evaluation and marketing initiatives to really understand the needs, the impact and our reach. And we really aim to embed youth voice in everything that we do. I wanted to give you a sense of some of the things that we were able to get up to last year, despite the lockdown and pandemic. Please do have a look at the website, as I say, because Maria's done an amazing job at putting on a whole range of resources that are on there for you to have a look at activities for children and links to places and digital resources and things. So I hope you find it of use. So we helped coordinate the distribution of art packs across the city in partnership with lots of other organisations. The Mighty Creatives and the Arts Council created Let's Create art boxes, and we distributed 550 of those around the city. And this has led on to a community craft cupboards project, providing food banks and community organisations with resources to keep their art cupboards topped up. We had great fun with supporting RSE Day and commissioning artists to make pre-recorded videos and linked to the themes of trust, cooperation, collaboration, communication and resilience. And it's all available on our YouTube channel, our new YouTube channel. We wouldn't have done that, I don't think, if it hadn't have been for all of the craziness of last year. So we were trying new things, doing things differently. And one of the other things that's still available for you to look at is we asked all of the arts partners to provide creative activities to support schools and parents with home learning. So the second edition of that creative activities pack again is available to download, and we hope that it's of use. I was really delighted to be able to kind of repurpose some of the funding we had and launch a small grants programme to support arts partners to apply for work that would really enhance their community partnerships. And so we're really, really pleased to, you know, contribute to some of these brilliant projects that the arts partners were undertaking last year. And in the autumn, we, you know, with well-being being such a great need and being identified as really important, we put together a month of wellbeing activities and worked with partners across arts sector, but also environmental and active organisations, and produced a Time for Wellbeing calendar. So some of you may have come across this already. Again, the resources are still there, the videos are available and can be used at any point of the year, really, with wellbeing activities that are linked to creativity and the 5 ways to wellbeing. So we had one for primaries and one for secondaries, and the PDFs are interactive, so you could click to a 2 to 3 minute video for each day. I think just to quickly run through the interlinking priorities that we've got this year. Youth empowerment is a big thing, and I think it's fair to say that everything that we do is in the spirit of collaboration and trust. And we know that to have the credibility that we want to have and the impact we want to make, we really need children and young people themselves to be influencing the programme. And so, and also influencing, you know, our arts partners and what they put on. And so we've got a number of initiatives around youth voice, a We Are Here project, which is a film project, the Youth Partnership Forum, which brings together representatives from lots of the other arts youth forums across the city and arts organisations, representatives. And then we're looking at maybe doing an autumn programme of events this September 2021, linking to kind of youth voice. And obviously the Cultural Rucksack is something that we're really wanting to spend more time on this year, and really sort of see it as the way in which we work collaboratively with you, with teachers, to have these regular teacher insight meetings. The reason I've got an exclamation mark after that wall planner is because we'd been working on sending you and printing you a wall planner, and it was nearly full. It was getting really good. But we thought you might all be a bit upset with us sending you a wall planner at this moment in time. But we do pull together a whole range of events and CPD opportunities, and you'll be getting them in your e-news if you've signed up to the mailing list. And they'll all be available on the website too. So there's lots we want to do, and that's what today is all about, really, to make sure we're doing the right things and it's of use to you. Obviously, the biggest thing about Challenge and the partnership itself is that we are a community of practice, that we're learning from each other, that we're identifying common challenges and opportunities, gaps in provision, and we're coming up with solutions together. We do that through an operations group, and that meets 5 times a year, and it's got the education and participation leads from lots of the arts organisations, and it also has educational representatives on it. And we advocate and champion for the importance of cultural education regionally, nationally, internationally, we hope, and you know, develop case studies and publish them on our website, and a whole variety of things. And obviously, we then, this year is a year where we need to make sure we've got funding going forward as well. So I'm going to come off this if I can and stop sharing. Have I stopped sharing? Can you all see each other and not my screen?
That's it. Good.
I hope that worked okay and you could see everything all right. So that was just really to give you a rundown of Challenge, and I'd like to introduce you to Chris Hall, who has sparked so much of this brilliant activity, and really I feel really privileged to have been able to work with her. She's here from the University of Nottingham, has done, her working life has been in cultural education and understanding the importance of it and sharing all of her amazing research. So I'd like to just hand over to Chris to say a few words of welcome and a little bit of background to the Cultural Rucksack, if that's okay with you, Chris.
Yeah, that was a lovely introduction, thank you. Well, I think I'll just try and say a few words from the point of view of the Education Improvement Board and where the Cultural Rucksack idea came from. So the Education Improvement Board was set up years ago after a lot of schools failed their Ofsteds, and really it's changed over time, and we've now rechristened it the Education Partnership Board, feeling that actually the best thing we can do to improve education across the city, because it's so fragmented, is to try to broker partnerships that are really sustainable on behalf of schools. So just take a sort of overview of that. So we work with trust leaders, with the local authority people and so on to try to do that. And one of the obvious partnerships to try to broker more strongly seemed to us from the school end to link with what Challenge is doing, because their work is so powerful and so useful. So through that, we came to the idea of the Cultural Rucksack. This isn't an idea that came from us. It's a well-established concept. It's been running at a national level in Norway for the last 20 years. But it seems to us a really, and it's in other countries too, but it seemed to us a really helpful metaphor to build a policy around. Because the idea of the Cultural Rucksack is that it sort of takes into account that each child has their own cultural heritage that they come to school with. So it's about adding into that rather than supplanting it. But at the same time, while we were trying to think about Nottingham as a place, it helps us think about what is it that we share just because we live in this place, and what should we share through the education system, the compulsory education system. Then we were thinking also about the research and what the research on school partnerships shows us. And that research, I mean, it's all sort of really blindingly obvious from the school end, but often it shows that often school partnerships start really enthusiastically and then they run out of steam. That often what's on offer for schools doesn't really fit with the timing of schools and the rhythm of school day. That often it doesn't fit with the curriculum neatly. We know that visits out of school are often seen as disruptive or are too expensive for transport costs and so on. And we also know that partnership links in school often come in the end to depend on one person, and that when that one member of staff runs out of steam or leaves, the partnership isn't really sustainable. So what we were thinking about as a partnership board was how we could try to do something differently. So in order to do that, firstly, sort of what we're looking for is really a citywide agreement between schools and the arts and cultural sector, local politicians, something that is distinctive for Nottingham, something that Nottingham can be proud of, that is part of the educational offer for Nottingham, that takes that city level really seriously. What we want to do is establish a sustainable programme that, rather than become a series of options, actually becomes an entitlement for pupils. So if you go to school in Nottingham, you will have the chance to find out about the main arts and cultural institutions of Nottingham. It seems a sort of basic cultural education set of rights and entitlements that we could sign up for. And we're hoping to build that kind of basic package as a programme of visits and experiences in school and out of school that works for schools in terms of the timing and in terms of the fit with the curriculum, and that offers something for every school year group that teachers can kind of depend on year, and know what's going to be offered, so that over time, over their schooling in Nottingham schools, students would be introduced to all the elements that we agree are the sort of basic components of that cultural rucksack, of the Nottingham Cultural Rucksack. So just thinking about how to do that, we think that what we need to do that is first of all to get that sort of legwork in place, to get the partnership brokered and the organisational element, and that's really the work that Cathy and Martin have been doing so well. We think that we need more teachers to have closer connections to local arts and cultural organisations, so that they need to be, rather than just the people you know, sort of opportunity for everyone, people who want to know, to get to know how the purposes of the organisations and how they work. We would like to see teachers and arts professionals working together on the specific elements of the programme, so that if we were building up this programme, if, for example, we decided that Nottingham Contemporary would make an offer to year ones and year eights or whatever, that offer would have been worked on by teachers and by arts professionals, so that you had something that really did fit and meet the bill and could be sustained and offered year on year, developed over time, of course. So that's the basic idea. And obviously, in a way, it seems like a terrible time to be asking anyone to do anything else. But in another way, it feels like exactly the right time to be emphasising partnership and the importance of cultural education, and the importance of young people actually getting a sense of owning these public institutions and being part of the city in which they live. So I hope you'll, think like that too, really.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chris. That was fabulous. Martin.
Yeah.
You're right. So Martin Smith is Cultural Rucksack lead, works with the Greenwood Academy's Trust, and will introduce himself.
I was going to say I should have had a rucksack ready to hand, haven't I? I've got loads in the loft above me, but nothing to show you. Yeah, so welcome everyone. First of all, I'm so pleased we've had such a good response to this. And I see this very much as the first stage in consulting with you as a broader group, and hopefully in time in more detail with you in smaller groups. So in terms of my background, well, I'm currently the Senior Education Advisor for the Greenwood Academy Trust, with the wonderful title of Academic Resilience, which I'm very proud of, and I spend half an hour trying to explain that to people mostly. But from my perspective, it's about, in terms of this particular project, it's about opening up, as Chris so wonderfully introduced, opening up access to the arts for all young people in the city, because I feel that's just so important in terms of their personal development. And against the background we've got today, I think it's even more important we get that engagement. So this is the right time. And it's certainly the right time from my perspective around recovery and recovery curriculum in particular. Never mind that. We talked about health and well-being, the work that Cathy's doing with the health and well-being calendar. I think that underpins a lot of it so much as well. So I don't think that this is just the perfect time to be doing this. It's going to be difficult to launch and get off the ground, admittedly, against the current background. But I certainly think by the time the spring comes, we should be in a good place to begin to embed some of these thoughts. So if we get my little presentation, I can actually go through now a little, try and sort of reveal a little bit more about what the nuts and bolts of the Cultural Rucksack might look like. But please bear in mind, this is very much a starting point for us. We want you to help shape it. So I'm not going to give you something, this is it, by a long shot, because otherwise there's no point in you here and getting your views on it. I want your views to count and to mould and shape and affect the direction that we go into. So if you've got my, shall I do my, can you give me control, or do you want to take control and do the little PowerPoint? I don't mind.
I think you can do it. Can
I do it? Oh, okay. Let's give it a go. And if I go down to there. Right. Oh, hang on, I've gone too quick. That's it. I didn't know the wheel on my mouse would do that, so I've just discovered a new skill, so thank you very much. Okay, Cultural Rucksack. I think we've already had a good lead because Cathy's really outlined what challenges. It's that cultural education partnership. Education and partnership are the two key words in some ways, with that cultural bit that really it sits at the heart of it. And so from my perspective, what we're doing in developing the rucksack is enhancing that relationship between schools and the wonderful sort of cultural and arts opportunities we have across the city of Nottingham. And in doing so, certainly from my perspective, it's about, on the back of that, ensuring every young person has access to the wonderful opportunities that are out there. And that will help in their own development and sort of hopefully take all that learning and those experiences into sort of lifelong engagement, as we say quite rightly there. So you can flip on, I'll go on to the next one if I may. That's it. So that's the strategic bit, which is sort of links into the sort of things that Chris was talking about. It's sort of emphasised it a little bit clearer here. It ties into that idea of, you know, the rhythms of the school curriculum, the school calendar, as Chris was highlighting. It'd be wonderful to make sure we got the match between the offer that was out there from cultural providers, arts providers, that we've got right across the city and beyond as well to some extent, and tied that into sort of where schools are in their delivery of the curriculum at any particular moment in time, so that the support is timely and also the support matches effectively what the schools are trying to achieve in their learning with young people. And so that's, I think, really part of it. So we're looking at how we can potentially do that. And again, the third point, we've mentioned this a few times, it's about celebrating, if you like, what Nottingham has to offer in terms of its heritage and that cultural diversity. And Chris mentioned about young people bringing their culture with them, and they do. And so it's not like their rucksack is empty. It's already full. I'm co-chair of Nottingham Nursery, and at 2 and 3, young people are bringing their culture with them into school, and that's really important. And it's a question of building on that and enlarging that and developing it. So that's massively important for me personally, and I think this is one of the things that will carry us through on the rucksack as well. So reinforcing it again there, it's about partnership. It's about working as partners, and why it's about providing, if you like, a really meaningful, sustainable, again the term that Chris used, link between what teachers and schools are trying to deliver and how they can be best supported in that with all of the wonderful opportunities that are out there from our arts and cultural providers. That said, there are 4 key things that sort of underpin it. Citizenship, well, of course, that links straight into certain curriculum areas. But I think one of the outcomes for me isn't just about getting young people sort of experiencing, it's about deepening that engagement, and it's about getting them involved eventually, so that they'll be the people in a few years' time who'll be taking the lead. And it's about looking and exploring that. I mean, part of our work within the Rucksack is going to be looking at also all the creative career opportunities that there are out there and what we can do to help young people access those as one of the outcomes from this project. And that, again, for me, is incredibly valuable, especially within these uncertain times. Yeah, of course, everyone's really keen about looking at their place, where they fit in within both their family community, if you like, the school community, and then the broader community of Nottingham. And that's going to be really important. And that links actually quite neatly into equity as well. Equity and diversity in particular, but also about that entitlement that Chris mentioned. And of course, one of the biggest challenges that we have, I think, in developing relationships is that issue around sustainability. And, you know, I've been working in schools, and first as a teacher and then as advisor eventually for goodness how many years, lots of years. So this is really important to make sure that we get things in place that aren't person dependent, that are sustainable, and that happen because people want them to happen. So that's really important as well. So how's it going to look a little bit? I'll move on, and there's just 3 more slides just to whiz through. So it's about linking the bit what happens in the school, about the school being delivering, you know, a broad cultural educational curriculum. We talk about now with Ofsted, and that cultural capital has been coined. The term about what sort of subjects are we delivering and how we can help enhance that delivery through cultural capital, and developing a broader enrichment curriculum and all the experiences that can revolve around that. Of course, as well, one of the things we're keen to try and develop is sort of high quality interventions between schools and arts providers. We've already got a really good framework at the moment with ArtsMark, so I'm very keen to work with existing structures and things that we have in place to enhance and build on our interactions to make sure they are of high quality. From the arts providers, well, we're looking at making sure the route into the provision that's out there is as smooth and as easy to access as possible. Schools often ask us, well, we don't know what's going on, because that's often because there's too much and they've got too much now anyway. So it's simplifying access into the offer that's out there, and we'll talk about that today, and how we can best work with those wonderful range of arts providers in a high quality way, which again underpins a lot of what Chris said. So what are we looking at doing? Well, we're looking at that arts entitlement, and we're looking at it in terms of really what we learn, which is the sort of things that's been driven by school, but it is broader than that as well. And we'll look at an example of that in just a minute. And therefore, and what we do in trying to learn, what things do we do to help us learn and achieve those educational outcomes and also experiences, and how we do it and who we do it with. So what we've begun to develop is a simplified framework, a simplified entitlement, which eventually will become a really clear, I suppose, this is what we'd expect you to have access to while you're at school in Nottingham. Not to do everything, but have access to a good range, a broad range, it says, of enrichment curriculum, of cultural activities. So we're going to just explore that in a minute. We're going to look at how we can engage with providers more effectively, and both in terms of schools and providers, looking at a two-way relationship, and how we can make that as easy as possible. And at the bottom of it, I say underpinning with that high quality bit. So let's just have a look now at what we might be talking about when we talk about arts entitlement. So what I've done here, for all the main curriculum subjects, this could be a massive piece of work. It started as a massive piece of work. I've got it down to a few slides now, which is great. So we've got music, we've got drama, perhaps film, reading, writing, art, design, dance, heritage, which I sort of combine a bit of history and geography there, but those are all elements we would talk about. PSHE, so that's really important. Well-being is high in there, and citizenship. So I've looked at those curriculum areas, and for each one drawn out some key headlines of what I suppose the statutory learning outcomes are going to be. And I've characterised a few here just for drama, just as an example. So having identified those, and that's in a way the easy bit, it's about, well, what can we be doing then to help in that learning process? So if I take my Nottingham nursery example, working with 2- and 3-year-olds down there, yeah, they'll be doing that informal role play. They'll be engaging in that. They might be taking on some roles, looking at a story they've heard, reenacting that outside. They could eventually do a class performance. Even at that age, we do a little play at the end of each term. So it's about some progressive bit that's in there. It's about supporting what's going on in the schools. It's looking at a range of activities that would be there to enhance and help with the delivery of the teaching of the learning. And then how do we do it? What can we do? What can we make use of that's out there that will help us in that what we do section? And that's all over to our providers. Now that could either be going out to them, or provision coming into the school. It could be staff and schools going out to particular locations where they could be doing self-led stuff, or activities led in association with. And these activities could be part of a much broader partnership or in-depth partnerships as well. So this is what we're beginning to look at, to pull out, if you like, that entitlement and begin to explore that entitlement. And to help us recognise or get to grips with what is out there, well, we've got a small sort of steering group going on with just some teacher leads looking at some ideas and some of the things we thought would help schools engage with providers and providers engage with schools. So I mentioned about a cultural map of Nottingham. Well, what's out there and what are people doing? Challenge we've already got, developing a really good web-based resource about what providers can do and what they offer, but we could perhaps put that in a different way. We're exploring things around central booking, perhaps, of transport and of locations, but also how we might manage visits into school. So this then becomes the practical things that are underpin this in terms of what schools might want in being able to ease their access into all those resources that are out there to help support them in what they're doing, if you like, in the first two columns. We'll come on to questions later, there might be lots. And so the how bit, this is the bit that is, so having identified eventually, once we've come to terms with it and hopefully got your feedback on it, what I can probably do at the end of this session is send out the slightly larger document about the progressive entitlement framework that we've got to get you to think about it, so we can build on that, if you like, and the opportunities. Goes then to the good practice that underpins it. Well, one of the things I know that Chris has done some work in the past is one way that this sort of approach works is if we have identified leads in each school. Now, the fact we've got some school leads already by default means there are people out there, and we know there are people out there already doing this, but there'll be some schools who may not have that. But where they do, we know that any initiative like this works so much more effectively. We want to underpin this and give those leads support, both through CPD, which Challenge has got an awful lot going on there, working with partners, through ArtsMark and Arts Hubs. And many staff will already be part of existing arts hubs. I mean, the Archway has one, for example. You know, so there is existing work out there, but there'll be some schools who have no access to that. So we need to make sure that provision is, if you like, pulled together and given them support as well. Another idea that's come out recently in discussions with people is the idea of a cultural map of what's out there, so that people can look geographically. I like the idea of a map because I'm a geographer, so that appealed to me straight away. So I like the idea of developing perhaps something along that idea. And Chris was talking about those sustainable partnerships. And again, someone came up there, why don't we get partners to adopt a school? So that every school in the city is linked to already, you know, to an arts provider and develops a sort of a closer working relationship. Again, we already have that happening. There are certain programs now. The Playhouse is developing programs along those lines. The Contemporary have had, they've been worked on with Royal Shakespeare Company. Those are in-depth, if you like, travels into the arts and cultural world. Well, I think it'd be great for everyone to get access to that, without forgetting we still need that broad brush bit. There are challenges, of course. I mean, school budget, some of this will come at a cost, so we're going to need to look at that. But maybe if we get this Cultural Rucksack packaged up in the right way, it could be the sort of thing that could attract maybe some support. I know one of the challenges as well from previous advisory roles is about getting schools out, and transport and bookings are always an issue. And we've been talking to colleagues at College Street about perhaps bundling that up into a one-stop booking shop, and we need to talk to providers about that potential issue as well, and others. So there's a potential, I think, really interesting piece of work to be done there. And then, well, what's the outcome for young people? It could well be, I hope, many of them more thinking, you know, there is a career out there for me. There is something, or if not, just a lifelong interest in a particular element or a range of elements around creativity and culture and the arts. So that's where I think we'd like it all to end up at. And there's lots of young people coming in, taking our shoes and moving into that line of work into the future. So that's, I think, the end is it. Yes. Yeah, you're there. I need a drink. Okay.
So, Martin, do you want to move into our discussion part of our evening? So we've got an hour left and some quite big questions that we want to discuss with everybody, really, and get the conversation flowing. And we thought it's in two chunks, two big parts. The first thing we wanted to talk about, and chip in, Martin, if I don't quite explain.
No, you're doing really well.
I think we wanted to really have a conversation about the change that you want to see come about because of the Cultural Rucksack. You know, what difference are we going to make? What are the things that will that you think we're impacting on? So what changes do you want to see as a result of the Cultural Rucksack from your point of view as teachers or arts providers? And I know we've not all, actually there's not as many of us in the room as potentially there may have been at the very beginning. I think we've had a few apologies today. So please, I think we're a small enough group to be able to say a little bit about, if you want to make a point, say a little bit about where you're from and your perspective. Because we do have time for to give this some in-depth discussion. So yeah, that's where our starting point, thinking about the why essentially, and what changes we're going to make, what difference this is going to bring to you, and then to move on to thinking around what do you want young people to experience in terms of arts and culture in support of that. Okay, and then later on, we'll talk around those specifics in terms of the delivery ideas. the barriers and the opportunities. But first, let's talk about the change that you want to see. So from a teacher perspective, how is all of this resonating with you? Are you already, part of a school that feels really creative and you might just want a bit of extra support? What are the things that are important to you? Please speak up, teachers in the room. We'd love to hear from you.
Does it sound like a good idea?
Some shaking of heads for those that I can see.
Like.
I don't want to pick on people, so you're going to have to unmute yourselves and say, or raise a hand on that. Oh, Tracy Haslam, would you like to let us know what you're thinking?
Just sounds wonderful. Yeah, just opportunities for our pupils. A lot of them won't be taken to galleries, theatres. It's that cultural rucksack. Some of them will. So it's just, as you say, they will come with some things in their rucksack, and it's just making sure that we can top that up. And I like the idea of there being a kind of a promise, that across the city you will have that entitlement. And it's just the support for schools, because we're trying to, just as coordinator, I'm trying to think about a gallery visit here or something there, but it's quite patchy and it will depend on what opportunities there are each year. It's quite a lot to organise as well. So just knowing, well, here is the entitlement and this is how I go about getting a handle on that. It's just all really encouraging. So anything we can do to work with you to make this happen would be brilliant. Yeah, and again, I think it's that team of people, so that it wouldn't just be one person. I think that's really important as well. It has to be more than one person on board, because you need your music lead, your art and DT lead, your PE coordinator for the dance. So yeah, maybe a creative team. Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Tracy. I think Martha also put a hand up.
Yeah, hello. The thing that really appeals to me is this idea of dependability, this kind of regular, this is going to be available for you. And I think that is possibly going to be, it might be a hard thing to do, I don't know, but that I think would be something I'd be really interested in exploring, that I could then talk to some of the teachers that I work with who weren't able to come today, but just to kind of say, actually, this is something that everybody can depend on, and there's a sustainability element to it. And I have to go back to the beginning of the 90s when Chris Hall and I first met. But to say that I stayed in Nottingham because there was this really clear art support network programme in the city, which I, in my youthful days, thought was kind of the thing that everybody did, and actually discovered it wasn't. And one of the things was this thing called 11th Session, which was a regular workshop that took place in schools and happened either on Saturday mornings or Tuesday afternoons. And it became a sort of real kind of grassroots but bedrock of opportunity for young people to engage in artistic activities. It was free. I know we're going back a bit, very old, but I think the thing that was of value about that was it was dependable. It was something that everybody had the right and entitlement to do. And I don't know if there's a virtue in maybe exploring an 11th session idea in 2021, something that might kind of echo the freedom, the artistic merit of teachers and artists working together to provide stuff as well. It wasn't just artists, it was also teachers working together. So I learned a lot of my crafts that way. So that's one thing I want to say, but also this kind of regularity, I think, is really important. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about how that could happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary's head teacher, I'm sorry I don't know your name, but thank you for raising your hand. Paul, could you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I've been on meetings all day. I should be an expert at that. So I need to hold my hands up and say that I'm not very arty, and and I need all the signposts that I can get. So, you know, it's knowing. In my last school, I started at St Mary's in September, and we're rejuvenating the curriculum, making sure it's got lots of connections, but it's really hard when you're not very good at it to look at, I'm just not arty. I played a bit of music and this and that, but I haven't got the passion for it that I know in my last school somebody had, the one-stop person that you'd go to for all of this. So it's, I like the idea of having a creative team in school, but I think that team would need some support to establish itself and signpost it, just to get that flavour and that feeling going, that buzz going, because I know, the trips we went on, the experiences we had from Sarah in my last school were amazing. The children loved it. They were so simple workshops at the arts, at the lakeside and things like that, and things in the city, but I just don't know where they are, and where to go to find them out. So to have somebody that was saying, these are the signposts that you need, this is where you go to find out, for music, for art, for PE, to have some information to support the teachers, because we're swamped at the minute, but we're always swamped. So to have somewhere and somebody that we can ring and go, we're looking for this, we've got this in mind, these are our topics, can you help us plan for the year, would be really useful.
Can I follow up with a question on that? In terms of there being more than one person that could be that support person for you, obviously challenges, we're at the end of a phone, but I'm thinking actually the support networks are quite often other teachers that have had support. So putting clusters of schools together, is that something that you feel you'd be kind of, you'd have the time to give to some regular sessions within either a geographical basis of where you are, or out of interest groups,
Yeah, definitely. Networking is something St Mary's has always done really well. As I say, I only started there in September, but they've always worked really closely with the city schools. So that's something absolute. But our staff meetings are chock-up with things from the trust directives. We're always being directed, and a lot of that is moderation and assessment, and it's making that time and having that passion and having somebody talk to us and inspire us with that passion and share that, so then we snowball into it. As teachers, we don't need much before we start to do things for ourselves, but we need that bite sometimes, because there's so many other pressures on us that it's finding that extra time, and it does take time to find the right source, doesn't it? You can't just go and expect something to be fabulous. We need that bit of help.
Sorry, Gareth from the Castle is asking whether you're the St Mary's that's in Bulwell or Hyson Green.
Hyson Green.
Great, thanks for that. It's really wonderful that you could join us today, and we really look forward to keeping in touch and connecting, because it's exciting. Congrats on the new job. I'm sure it's probably still feels quite new. We're in this kind of
great timing to take it on.
I know. So, brilliant.
Thank you.
I don't know if anyone else has got a raised hand, but I wonder at this point whether if we go back to that question of what change do you really want to see, could we get an arts provider's sort of perspective on that as well, in terms of your sense of how would the Cultural Rucksack support the kind of difference that you're wanting to make, or being part of it? Would anyone like to take up that question?
I think it's only me and Lisa who are here from city providers. I'm happy to jump in, and Lisa, please as well. I think for us, so hello, I'm Gareth. I'm the new learning manager at Nottingham Castle. We're obviously in a quite lucky situation in that our site has been closed since 2018, and we've been redeveloping our entire programme. We've been doing that in consultation with teachers and working alongside Challenge and working with Martin. Martin, in fact, came and tested some of our Robin Hood stuff just before Christmas, which is very, very exciting. But obviously lots of that is still in flux, particularly with COVID potentially pushing back opening dates. So share Kathy's hatred of trying to get a wall planner sorted for this year, and everything keeps on getting cancelled and rearranged. For me, I'm in an enviable position as an arts provider and a provider for schools, in that I've got stuff that's still being developed, and I have paid development time to be making that. So if schools want to say, oh, we really want this, and also ways that we can have elements that we can bespoke for each schools. I know Lisa was in a meeting with us just before Christmas, and people from the Contemporary where we spoke about stuff like that. So really, it's about making sure that we can give you, to use a phrase that Martin introduced me to, value for learning and value for money in what you choose to do when you come off your school site and come to visit one of the establishments in the city. It's an incredible city. I've lived all over the UK and in various other parts of the world as well. And Nottingham's got a really great offer, really well concentrated, that delivers so much. And we all work together. There's an element of obviously you're in competition with your other arts and creative providers. But I know that if I can talk about our heritage offer, we're rubbish at Victorians and we're rubbish at Tudors. We can't really do them very well because Nottingham Castle didn't have very much at those periods, but we've got Wollerton Hall right on our doorstep, which is brilliant for Tudors. If you're wanting to do something much more around a really particular contemporary art topic, you've got an amazing national portfolio organisation in the Contemporary on your doorstep, whereas what we've got is much more allied to trying to be a whole day offer that covers off art, history, literacy, citizenship, and a brand new adventure playground, which is really exciting, all on one spot. So we know that actually if you come to us and say, and I think we're all grown up enough and work together enough as arts providers that we can also say, we're probably not the right fit for that, and be really honest with you, but give you, I can go, but here's Lisa's email or Lisa's phone number, go and talk to her about going to the Contemporary. So that for me is what we really want to get out of it. Make sure what we're doing is delivering what teachers want, and teachers just to have honest conversations with us, and Kathy to be that broker in the middle and to keep shouting out when she thinks we're doing the right things. So yeah, that's kind of from me.
Oh, thank you, Gareth. That was really good. And Lisa has raised her hand. Lisa from the Contemporary, welcome.
Oh yes, thanks, Gareth. I agree with everything you've just said, actually. And it was really interesting to hear some of Chris's points as well. And I think just picking up on that specificity of offer, so that schools are aware of exactly what we can and what we don't deliver. So there's no sort of messing around. It's really that the offer's really clear, and just having that, like Gareth said, that honesty. You know, our offer, it doesn't suit everyone. You know, and that's a message that we give to all our families as well. You know, we might not be for you, but we've got the castle, we've got the Galleries of Justice, we've got No Art Exchange. And that's a much friendlier way of working, and brings us together as a you know, a cultural sort of sector, makes us stronger. And I think if people see that, we're not fighting against each other, we're working together. So it's exactly what Gareth said. I think going back to the question about what changes we want to see, I don't know whether this sort of applies to it, but I just noted down that we were talking about, this almost applies to the cultural capital as well, what children bring with them to school. And obviously we've been running the Schools of Tomorrow programme, and it's great to see Tracy here. And I think what I want to see is the sort of judgmental aspect of what people have with them. So that it's about the arts, isn't it? It's like someone's cultural engagement may be going to see a Disney film, and that's acceptable. Whereas another level is actually, you know, going to see a really awkward contemporary art exhibition. So and what I've noticed is that some of the things get dismissed, and it's about that personal view of, you know, what is culture. Which is applied, you know, it depends where you are in the system, I suppose. But so I think there's a bigger conversation around that, about how we act, you know, what levels are we talking about, and how we accept those.
So what difference would it make for you, Lisa, do you think, to be part of the Cultural Rucksack, which brings together this, like, I'm pushing it a little bit just to kind of really get to the heart of what. How do you think it will change? Do you think it will be I heard you say this sense of, you know, that schools really recognise the art sectors working together, you know, so that there's that kind of promotion that's a kind of joint promotion and a sense of
cohesion
and just coordination, I suppose, for that.
Yeah.
And
like schools working in clusters, you know, it's really good if we work in clusters. I mean, obviously we've got Artscape, but organisations like Challenge put us in touch with people that we wouldn't necessarily work with. So there's opportunities there as well.
Okay. And Antonia, welcome, Antonia. Would you like to share some thoughts? I think you raised your hand. Antonia Byatt, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I forgot I was muted.
That's okay.
I've been talking to myself and saying hello and how interesting it's been listening to everybody. I'm just a kind of question, because First Story works in secondary schools and we've worked in various secondary schools in Nottingham. But I just wondered whether, I mean, I suppose I'm kind of, secondary schools work very differently to primary schools. So I think that's quite an interesting question to think about. And the other thing I've been thinking about as I've been listening, and let me just tell you very briefly what First Story does, because I'm sure some of you won't know. But First Story, it works in various parts of the East Midlands, but in a few schools in Nottingham, and it also works in Yorkshire and in London too. But we place writers in residence in secondary schools. We're very, very targeted about the cohort of pupils that we work with. So at least 70% of those pupils will be pupil premium, and their criteria for the remaining 30%. But so First Story is quite a deep programme in that it consists of a series of writing workshops that are in school but out of school hours normally, and then it connects with various other partners. So the young people, the kind of outcomes for the programme are very much around creativity, confidence, and developing writing skills, but it very much aims to give young people the chance to develop their own voice, and to write from their own experience. So in that sense, going back to Martin's point about about it being about the culture, what those young people bring to the cultural life of Nottingham, what they are writing and what they are producing is out of Nottingham, because it's about their voice. But I mean, it's interesting thinking about a rucksack. I've been thinking about it as a metaphor, because you normally buy lots of different things and you put it in the rucksack, and depending on what you need at the time, you'll put different things in, and some of them, I guess, will be essential's the wrong word, but definitely more expensive or more of a commitment or heavier to carry or whatever, and some of them will be lighter things. And I guess the way First Story we think about it and how we would, could or would like to work with a partnership like this is that we're running quite a long, deep programme, but then we have partnerships with other local partners like Unislam or the 2 universities in Nottingham, or we often work with galleries or museums, and that's part of the experience that the young people get out of our programme, and we link together. But it's really interesting. I guess I'd comment, it's really interesting being an arts organisation where, of course, you're really concerned with the success of, what you're really offering with your programme, and then how you fit into a much wider kind of network and provision, and particularly where it's part of a school's creative offer, because obviously we're quite often only working in our own art forms. But of course, when we go and do something in a gallery or museum, or with a theatre company, we're mixing that up, but never in the kind of broad way that you're describing with that kind of city-wide map. So I think that's a kind of really interesting challenge that nobody can consume all of it, and it's how do you decide which little bits are going to matter the most.
Thank you, Antonia, for your reflections on that. I know Nettie's had her hand up for a little while, so Nettie, would you like to jump in? And then I think we might need to move on to talking about the, you know, what experience in terms of arts and culture you'd like children to be having in schools.
Really quickly, I've got two hats. Well, I've got one hat, but I'm going to put another hat on in a minute. So yes, my job is to support schools who are doing ArtsMark or Arts Awards, but I see also crucial to that job is connecting schools with cultural organisations. And I think what this will do is it will highlight, signpost, get everybody working together. So that's what I value. But because also I run a theatre company, Dragon Breath, at Capelwick Company Station, so I'm coming in as a cultural provider here. Because we came out of a research project with Nottingham University in the education department, what was really key about that partnership we had with Capelwick was that we developed our whole programme, our immersive programme, or like a term's work or half term's work, around an inquiry question. So what I want to see working through heritage is how you can ask a question that everything coalesces around in terms of curriculum, and for schools to be happy and run with that and take that on board. And I just wanted to add that in, which is about sustained partnership, but sustained work across the curriculum in interdisciplinary in schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nettie. Martin.
Yeah, sorry.
I just wondered, in terms of the time that we have left, there's so many interesting questions and
I know.
that we have in this.
I'm talking between chat and what people are saying. It's a nightmare.
I just really want to make sure that you get everything you need, you know, to move things forward over the next like 40 minutes with all of these wonderful people. So out of the practical questions or the discussions that you want to have, do you want to highlight which question you really want to take next?
Hard to say, really. I guess the feedback I'm getting from schools is that you would value more support and guidance about what's out there, how that might interlink and support curriculum learning. I think what we're developing will happen around that. I mean, obviously, Martha's point again about linking that provision to a baseline provision. Again, I know what we talked about that, Kathy. It's something that will underpin it, and that becomes and builds into that entitlement as well. So I'm beginning to see a picture around that. I guess for me now, it's about linking that, talking to providers as well. I think what I'd love to do, I mean, Robert's been writing some great stuff as well about, you know, creative careers and how that links in. So again, there's options there. But in terms of where we go next with this, I think there's enough here for me to go away and start asking people in smaller groups to come and discuss things, because I think that will move things quicker and in some more detail. I'm getting the feeling that people can see a value in it. I mean, again, the work that Nettie's been doing, I'm really keen to look at ArtsMark's role in supporting this. And I know one of the things that Chris was particularly interested in was looking at how we can develop high quality interactions and what that might look like. And I think what ArtsMark gives us is a framework for that. But I'll be right in saying that, Nettie?
Yeah.
Chris,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and also from schools' perspective, being clear about what the offer can be, but also I think what I'd like to find out from providers is what do you need in terms of information from schools to help to manage your offer that best fits in with them. So I guess the cultural rucksack's in the middle, and trying to bring the two sides closer together in terms of what each other's needs are and how they can respond better to support those needs. And that's part of the cultural partnership, I suppose. That's what that's about. But I'm beginning to think we've got something we can work with, which I'm quite excited about. So that's good. What were the other questions? I've got 3 computers here. I've only got 1 left working. The one which had all the things we were going to talk about has crashed. So, so you asked me a question at a really awkward time.
No, so one of the other questions was around managing input from young people themselves.
Yes.
And really, that's a question I think for teachers within schools. I mean, I know you may have youth panels or representatives or different kinds of. If you're in a secondary, you'll have, you know, head boy and head girls and things like that, and people that have a platform to be a youth voice within the school. But how can we work with you to really understand where young people are coming from and their existing sort of cultural heritage that can be celebrated, or the link with parents and families that can come into schools? Is that a concern at the moment, or something that you're already working towards?
Yeah. Can I just underpin that with a quick comment? We talked about co-design earlier. I think co-design is as important with young people involved as it is with teachers and learning staff. I want to find a way of harnessing that so that this entitlement we develop, okay, we're basing it on what they've got to learn, but it's not just us imposing it on them. I'd want to see their voice in it to shape it as well. So as well as your voices, we need to capture that voice. And if you folks can help us do that, both in schools, or we can do it through partnerships that Kathy's got, massively important. Anyway, yes, what can you do? How can you help us?
Or how can we help you to create, to help to generate that voice that then is captured and gathered? Like, we had a conversation around the better learning curriculum, around the anti-racist curriculum the other day, and we were talking about, you know, how then we might be able to put together almost like a lesson plan for teachers to be able to have some straightforward conversations with young people around some of those issues, to make sure young people's opinions are being you know, heard, and then there's a kind of feedback loop to make sure there's a feedback loop back to the students as well, so that it's not just kind of, well, we're listening to you but we don't tell you what comes of it. So I wonder whether you'd welcome that kind of thing. Oh, Chris.
I'd like to respond to that, really. I think teachers are really good at knowing what kids think and talking to kids. That's their expertise. And I think that it's quite easy in these discussions to jump to the outcome that you want, to the idea of the partnership being between the cultural organisation and the young people. And what the literature tells you really strongly is that often teachers get sort of sidelined, oddly, in that. To me, the really important thing to start building this, to make it sustainable, is to build the relationship between the teachers, so that teachers really know and understand what's on offer and what goes on in the institutions. And I'd just like to respond to the comment that, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, St Mary's head teacher, that you said you're not arty. I think it doesn't matter at all if you're not arty. If you believe that kids should have a cultural education, you need to know what's going on in the city in which you live and what those different organisations are trying to do. You're a teacher, you know how to do that. You're also a senior leader in your school, and you're willing to give resource and support to doing that. We know that the partnerships don't work properly if they don't have SLT support. And already there's been this discussion about the need for teams of people to get together, different staff to come together. That needs leadership support. It needs the leadership to say, actually, cultural education is a basic part of what we do in our school. And in order to do that well, teachers have to be really well informed about what's on offer and what the different institutions are doing. So I just feel quite passionately that the way of making this sustainable in the long term is to trust teachers to do the work of talking to young people and getting them involved and knowing what, because that's their expertise, and bringing them in. But in the first place, to have a really strong professional development partnership conversation between the arts and cultural professionals and the teachers, so that teachers just feel, I get it, I know what a New Art Exchange is about, I know what this is trying to do, I know why it's here and what it might be able to offer, and therefore I can think creatively about where I put this in my curriculum. And then the other point that I just wanted to respond to, sorry to go on, but is in relation to something that's come up in the chat around resource, because if you think of this as an add-on, then you'll think you'll need to look for extra resource about it. If you actually believe that cultural education is part of what a school should offer, whether it's primary or secondary, then it's about how to work it into the curriculum you've got. Because the truth of this is there isn't any extra money floating around for this, or very, very little extra that we can access. And so there are no big pots waiting for people to apply to. It's about how to do it within the resource that exists and how to make better use of what the arts and cultural organisations are putting into their programmes for schools already, just to make more of them. So we need to be better at doing that. Although, having said that, I think the last point I want to make is that as a partnership board, we believe that if there's a citywide entitlement programme, we may well be able to go to sponsors and say, look, Nottingham is doing this. We care about cultural education. We've got a lot of cultural institutions. This is what we want to do. Give us some sponsorship. Equally, we can go to city transport and say, give us some free bus fares into the city so that we can get kids in once it's the appropriate time to be doing that. So we do think there's some potential for leverage, but it has to be once it's at the city level. So, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I wonder if teachers want to respond to that. That provocation from Chris around the resources and building it in. Would any of the teachers in the room like to respond to that and how that feels? Martha, I don't know if you've got your hand up in a new hand. Is that a new hand?
Yeah, got lots of old hands up.
There's people with hands up that haven't put them down. They must be exhausted. I think a couple of things. I think Chris is right. I think there is resource there. It's just about encouraging, particularly SLT, to understand that this is important and it can be diverted if it isn't currently being so. I think also that the very little I know about This Is Derby as a partnership, I think they have been able to go and look for bigger pots of funding as a citywide partnership. So that is another possibility, but you have to get the groundwork, you have to identify the need and the commitment before you can do anything like that. I think the only other thing I was going to mention was with reference to what you were saying, Kathy, about young people and engagement. And I think two things. One, I'm doing a really lovely project with schools and a new art exchange around cultural identity. In which a piece of work has been developed by one of the artists there, which enables teachers and students to start exploring what cultural identity might mean as a way of then moving into ideas around symbolism and then using symbolism in art in a lantern project called Shine a Light, which we're hoping to get completed one way or another before it starts getting light and it kind of completely blows the idea out of the water. So I think the arts organisations are very well placed to provide different ways of approaching similar questions that can be looked at in schools. And then finally, I just think the idea of a youth empowerment event, a listening project and activities in the city would be fantastic. So any support you need for that, I'm your gal. I'd be really happy to help with that in any way, because I think that would make a massive difference and would be terrific. Good, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. That's really good to hear. And I do hear what you're saying, Chris, about the teachers and the arts professionals getting that right first and trusting teachers and their everyday conversations and knowing the children. But I think challenge itself also needs to know that we're gathering that from teachers and that it's coming from that place. So yeah. Really interesting discussions. Has anyone got their hand up that I've missed? Kevin, I've noticed you've got a raised hand.
Yeah, yes, and I'll lower that before I forget to. Yeah, so I've been sat here thinking and not wanting to divert the conversation down potentially a blind alley, because it's felt, as you said, it's felt really useful. But I've sat here thinking about, you know, the kind of underlying principles that have been talked about, the cultural entitlement of children and young people in the city, and there is absolutely this conversation to be had between arts providers, cultural organisations, amateur, professional, voluntary, the whole range of the provision, and schools. But I've also been thinking about what is the input of parents and carers within this, and how is that reflected in the cultural rucksack? So we've said that children and young people come to school with their rucksack half full, and schools may have an input into filling that up further. Yeah, so just a head-scratching question. Where do we go with that? Are parents and carers part of this too?
It's a good question. St Mary's. What's your name? I'm really sorry.
Mary.
Oh, you're muted.
I'm like, am I still on mute? I'm turning it off as I speak. I knew I would be. I think that's a really great point, and I think the more the parents are included and involved, the better. You know, I'm thinking about in the past night light. You know, that's been a great time when we've kind of made something in school, but parents have come in to help make things in school. And then I think we've like held a stall where people have come to it. Is that right? That happened. So, you know, people have kind of made some things out of milk bottles and, you know, really celebrated the arts and different, you know, the lights and the shadows. And, you know, the parents then got off and looked at the different offers on that night. So I think as much as possible, if the parents can be involved and, you know, come in to support, I think we're very offs, and I'm conscious that things like, you know, Black History, and in my last school we did a cultural diversity day, and these are great, but it'd just be good to spread that through the year so they're not one-offs. I'd rather not do Black History day, week, month, you know, I'd rather do it as an ongoing. So, you know, I love the idea of the exploring cultural identity. You know, it's just great. I just think children need to be proud of, and we're trying to bring stories into school more and more, just so there's that representation of different cultures as well. And it's, you know, exploring the arts in that sense, and music, you know, it's really exciting, but it's just, we need to open our eyes a bit more and look at our curriculum really hard, and that's what we are in the process of doing, to make sure that we've got them links throughout it, not just as the one-offs that are good, but they're not the best.
Yeah, brilliant. So if we're conscious of time, was there, Martin, was your hand raised? I don't know.
It was raised just briefly, yeah. I mean, going back, I know Kevin wants to respond, but just going back to Kevin's point, it's really important. Certainly, I've tried to capture some of that in my sort of things to do column. That's important. I know from my own perspective as working with Nottingham Nursery that those young people get a wide range of cultural experiences, often led by parents and people from the local community. So it's about starting from your own home baseline. And, you know, Martha quite rightly said to me that a lot of schools are actually, you know, beacons for art and culture within themselves and what they do, as well as arts providers outside. So, yeah, the school is a great catcher and gathering point for it. We need to recognise that and support that in some way we can. So just wanted to make sure that was recognised. It was a very, very worthwhile point.
Yeah, and I think Tracy had some experience of working with parents and taking them to the contemporary. Tracy, do you want to tell us about it?
Yep. Hi. This was part of the START project with the Nottingham Contemporary. The sort of build up really similar to the Schools of Tomorrow, but it was a kind of an end point. So the children had visited an exhibition, then there were some artist workshops, and the work was developed, but then it was exhibited in the gallery, and that was the wow factor for the children. There was a lot of the work. I know we've been talking about aspiration in the arts and arts careers. And the children could see the sort of technical side, the curators, all the many roles that go into putting on the exhibition. So it was fascinating for the children, but because we came on the tram, we needed 12 about 12 adults, I think. So we encouraged the parents to come with us, but actually when we got there, a lot of them hadn't, were not regular gallery goers, but got really involved in the activities and really enjoyed the experience. And then some took the children back in the half-term holiday, but perhaps wouldn't have done that if they'd not. So I think parents will engage, but it's about it's building those opportunities in and planning for that engagement, because it's perhaps not going to happen unless we do something to make it happen. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you. Should we move on to talking about delivering the offer and the barriers and opportunities that we're looking at providing? Maybe, I'm not quite sure the best way to do this, because we've got a fairly long list of things we want to do that we want to test out your how. I think there's some of them, and I've heard Martha say this before, that we just need to keep it simple and clear what it is that we're actually going to do. And there are some things that Maria and I can work on to make things super clear, like a directory of all of the arts organisations, all of their art forms, the sorts of things that they might provide, and leave it up to you to make those decisions. But one of the things that's so brilliant about the Cultural Rucksack and what we want it to be is our ongoing collaborative work with schools, and that sense of building relationships and facilitating these sorts of meetings, but making sure that these meetings really get to that point, the juicy point of, the practicalities, the things that lead to action. And so yeah, I guess the first point of making sure that every school, we know who their arts lead is there anything around that from a teacher's or head teacher's perspective that we should know about? Like, is it hard for you in school to identify a cultural lead, or is it straightforward, and from your point of view you think everyone wants to do it, they fight over the job? Anyone want to answer that question? I think some of you are recognising each other and chatting in the chat, and sorry if I've missed anything in the chat, please do say. So yes, St Mary's head teacher.
I think that seems really important, and I don't think it's something that's clearly established. I think it's something that we need to establish, making sure that it's a shared responsibility, and then if one person does leave, then it will still be part of a team that somebody else will join. If I said Sarah Fedishen's name to you, I know Nettie, you're probably familiar with Sarah Fedishen. She's got so many connections with the Playhouse, with she's our last lead, and I know that so much value goes into her work at my last school. But you have to have a team, and I think we definitely need to establish that and make sure it's a shared responsibility supported by SLT.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
I think I've been involved in some of the wellbeing work in schools lately with various cluster support groups and things for wellbeing, and the comparison with the different kind of support agencies that have anything to do with wellbeing in a school, and the role of the role of the wellbeing lead within the school. It really made me think that role kind of needs a clarity in terms of what it encompasses. And I wonder whether within the Cultural Rucksack, by the school signing up to being part of the Cultural Rucksack and that cultural lead team being given a kind of welcome pack about what it means and some of the connections and the things that we might be doing, the kind of current opportunities potentially, but knowing that will come through each term, or that they'll get their wall planner and the various things in terms of bump to support them. And then the sort of series of teacher insight meetings or cluster groups that they can be invited to. I kind of want to make sure that we go from this conceptual stage of knowing that it's a good idea into the delivery of it, without there having to be a moment that the Cultural Rucksack is launched, and we've pressed the button on it. It's almost like we need this. It's a collaborative way of working. It starts now. The Cultural Rucksack is the work that challenged us with schools. And we will be producing the stuff dependent on what arts providers can give us, and the time that teachers can give us to help build our understanding of what's needed. And that's an ongoing long-term you know, if it's going to be sustainable, then you have to think of it as an ongoing long-term thing, don't you? Lisa, I've just spotted you put something in the chat, but I've not read it yet. Would you like to make whatever that point was?
Sorry, I've been typing away.
No, it's fine. I think you're just saying about
which point did you want me to note?
I think it's that importance of there being a team. I think it's really important for the way that we put it in the welcome pack as well, to make sure we get our communications right, that we're not just saying identify one person, but it's you know.
So we've noticed with our programme that we have we started off with one key person that we work with at the school, plus someone from senior management team.
Yeah.
And going back into year 2, we've gone back into a different world where those teachers may be self-isolating, you know, they may be off ill, or they've been made redundant, or they've moved on to another school. And so the importance of working you know, in a team within the school. Our artists sort of embedded themselves within the school, but, you know, it was one key person. So I think that's really important, just what you've said about it being a team. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, for us, it's not everyone who works within the arts. So, you know, we're working with the sort of dinner staff and some of the office staff as well, because through conversations you find that their interests actually, that they're interested in culture, and this gives them an opportunity to engage. So so it's just really emphasising that point of requiring a team. It also takes the pressure off one person as well, who feels that everything relies on them.
Yeah.
And it's too much pressure for a teacher, given everything else that they've got to do, you know. So yeah.
Brilliant. Exciting. And so in terms of the support then for that team that we want to give, the things that we might be able to produce, Maria's here taking notes, I'm sure, of what you say at this point, because this is the bit where it's kind of, we really want to know the things that are going to make the most difference to you in terms of what we could be gathering and providing. So yeah, in terms of I get the feeling that you're all really up for kind of the smaller hubs. I think Emma mentioned earlier about the small hubs in a local area would be useful.
Yeah, just jumping in, Kathy. I think most people again about who's out there, because I think that's key for people. So building that picture up, which I know you've started, so that staff have all staff in schools, or especially the leads or the teams, have got an idea of who's out there, and what people are doing, what the offer is currently. We'd also like to try and mould that offer in time around the entitlement. So it's not, so people will be looking at what providers are offering and how does it best fit what they're trying to deliver, meeting that up. So I know we talked about this sort of map which was mentioned. I think that's a good way of perhaps just giving an overview, and it's about how detailed that becomes. Admittedly, we had that point raised already and quite what you include in it, but just to give people an oversight to start with, to begin their exploration of what's out there. I'm getting the feeling that that's something that's going to be really useful for folks. And as you quite rightly say, then support for individual schools potentially, but for the hubs as well, mutual support that brings with it, and developing that, maybe some ongoing, more in-depth relationships with one or two providers. So I mean, that baseline offer, what is it, and how can we plug into it, I suppose. And then one of the things we talked about, I know, was this one-stop booking shop. I mean, one of the things around transport, just before lockdown, we were just getting close to getting almost free public transport for all pupils in the city between 9 and 3. I think we were there, weren't we? A lot of it. So we're very close to getting something like that now, because transport's a big barrier. I know that from previous role in the city council. And then linked to that, just helping schools with their bookings and management, because, as we've already heard, there's a lot on people's plates. How can we make the process easier?
Yeah.
What can we do?
Can I ask? Yeah, sorry, Martin, if you're in the middle.
That's right, I'm stopping there.
No, I thought you were coming to the end.
I could go on forever. It's all right.
Nettie's got a hand up, but also I think Emma Hollis has been waiting for a little while to make some to comment and reflect on the conversation. Emma, do you want to?
No, I'm happily tapping away in the chat box because I'm neither school nor cultural organisation, but I do, as it were, represent the head teacher group in the NST context, and you know, where there are 32 primaries, there is a huge range, as I'm sure you're aware, from totally engaged. One of my schools is Heathfield, you know, platinum ArtsMark. Couldn't be more arty if they tried. Tracy is another one of my schools at Milford, fabulous arts infrastructure. From that to what do you mean the art curriculum?
Yeah.
And from that point of view, I think there is a level of advocacy that has to happen, and obviously that's why I'm here this evening. Because it's a fabulous opportunity, fantastic concept, but somebody does need to be identified very clearly in each school, and that does have resource implications, you know, whether we not like to acknowledge it or not, and where there is no funding attached currently, I know currently, that for some heads that will be problematic, because you know, you've got to release somebody, even if we're just talking about 2 hours a week, you've still got to release somebody to do the admin work, even if they're not physically attending anything or you know, running anything. You know, there's got to be somebody and a resource there, and for a smaller school that's hugely problematic, you know, where I've got a school with 250 kids, you know, it's genuinely difficult, and where leaders have been identified for certain curriculum areas, but there just wouldn't be anyone left over to be the arts person. So you know, there is an advocacy issue, and then there is a resource issue.
Okay, and I think there might be some answers to some of these things in terms of resource issues, where schools are interested in, you know, starting an ArtsMark journey, for instance. You know, the group schools offer that TMC offer, or there may be things that we can incorporate into funding, consortium funding bids, you know. So it's knowing that there's the interest there, isn't there, and having somebody almost, I want to have a road show. Listening to what you're saying, I feel like we need a road show going around to some of these schools to really inspire people.
I was just putting in the chat box that the NST members meeting, which is in theory 32 heads, is a great opportunity. So perhaps having a little Martha moment. I'm only picking on Martha because she's the art lead, for NST, and you know, somebody like Martin or yourself would, you know, that could, and me sort of cheering in the background, but you know, that's one little bit of advocacy. But you know, of course, those of us who've worked in the East Midlands for a while know that we've got precedents here in the form of creative partnerships, for example. All that money that went in there, sigh, and so there are, you know, directories that were created and things that could be, as it were, not exactly resurrected from the point of view of people having moved on and organisations even having finished. But you know, there are precedents, aren't there, for this sort of work, and I think it just requires a bit of a spark. And I think heads are desperate for answers, for solutions, for support in all areas of the curriculum, and so this is going to be, I think, fantastic. But obviously it just does need a sense of what the money might be in the future, perhaps.
Yeah, okay. And a sense of the journey along that road as well. So it's not just the Heathfields or wonderful Milford that kind of, you know, sort of feel like they're already there. You kind of want that, there's stepping stones to get there, don't you? So it feels like it's broken down in manageable chunks.
But it does make my heart glad at this time of pandemic and in the dark and in the snow, that you're doing everything that you are. So well done.
Thank you. It's lovely to meet you virtually. Nettie, you've got your hand up.
I have. It goes back to points. I don't really want to take it back there too far. I mean, just because there's lots of stuff going on in the chat. Yes, ArtsMark is a great vehicle to support schools and for schools not only to be one lead but to be a team. Why I put my hand up originally was I thought actually if there's a sense that I know is part of the initiative that Martha brought to the last meeting, which was actually you partner, you join up, you partner with an organisation. Well, your first meeting is with the arts team and that organisation, so it's never just one person. You know, I know it's hard for village school things, Emma, I do understand all that, but you know, you get you right up front, you get your 3 or 2 team players at that meeting with their partner. The other key person on, I don't need to say this, I know you know it, but on that arts team is your curriculum lead. That's what I'm getting more and more. People that are responsible for curriculum, because it is about curriculum. Yeah, that's it. That was what I wanted to do.
Brilliant, thank you, Nettie. There's some really good points going on in the chat, so I hope you do get a chance to read the chat. And I really like Gareth's last point about the fact that just because a school doesn't have lots of visits or trips to arts organisations, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not got a really rich arts curriculum. They might be doing things just differently, and so it's that knowledge, isn't it? We're really needing to kind of understand what's going on in schools. Martin, I'm conscious of time and that you might want to.
I know.
With some
I'm amazed people are still staying here. It's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think we probably ought to work towards wrapping it up now, because you've given good 2 hours of your time, which is fantastic. So thank you very much. And I guess last thing we're looking at there is next steps. Well, we've got loads to think about following today for start off. So there's plenty in the chat meeting going on there. Just to say that we do have a small school steering group. We've just sort of got some people together. If anyone's interested in joining us on that, it's just schools at the moment, but we'll expand that out just to make sure that the thinking behind this is sound and we're going in the right directions. And the other thing I'm desperate to do with all of you here today is have a couple of smaller, if I invite a few to 3 or 4 smaller meetings, so we give you a real opportunity to discuss and for us to get your feedback. And before that, we'll be hopefully outlining sort of our outcomes from this particular meeting. So today we will have moved the Cultural Rucksack on. There's no doubt about that. We need to just see where we are and then discuss from that point onwards. So we keep that momentum going in terms of its development. So I think, Kathy, if we can work out some dates and times for people to be invited back into some smaller groups, because I mean the chat's been brilliant, by the way. I've been in some I don't know how many of these sorts of conversations over the last 9 months, both in this country and across the world, and this is probably one of the best chats I've come across so far. So brilliant, thank you all for typing away. I also have, by the way, just as an aside, we had an approach about 8 weeks ago from the Portuguese government wanting to find out what we were doing on our cultural rucksack. So hopefully I can go back and tell them now, because at the time I wasn't really very clear what we were doing, but I managed to bluff my way through. So yes, we have moved on and some brilliant points made. Thank you ever so much.
Tracy, you had a raised hand, so I just didn't want you to go with it still hanging on to something that you were burning to say. Is there anything you were burning to say?
No, sorry, it shouldn't have been up, but I do want to say thank you very much. It's just been very inspiring and be very keen to be involved going forward. It looks as if we just have so much opportunity in the city and so many schools that want to make the most of those opportunities. It's just about linking it all up now, isn't it, and making it happen. So thank you very much. Sorry about the hand.
Everybody, you've been brilliant, and I'm really, really pleased that we've been able to have this opportunity to talk today, and for all of your brilliant input as well. So we will definitely be in touch. If you haven't signed up to the school's newsletter that we produce, it'll be going out again next week, packed full of information and fabulous links. Thanks to Maria and all your wonderful copy. So yeah, please do sign up to our newsletter if you haven't already. There's a link, either on our website or at the bottom of my email that you received today. So it's brilliant. Thanks so much, everyone, and really enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening.
Yep, snowshoes on.
Yeah. My kids have gone out in it somewhere. Take care.
Thank you.